Okay, so good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, I'm sorry, it's not even morning. Okay, it's morning on Sophie's end, but it's afternoon on our end. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker today, who is going to talk to us about Elixir education and Elixir adoption. So this is a subject that has piqued interest over time because of Elixir's growing popularity. Not forgetting how old it is, actually. It's how young it is. Yes, I was still talking about Elixir. Our speaker is an engineer at GitHub and the co-author of Programming Phoenix Live. She graduated from the Flatiron School Programming Bootcamp and then went on to teach there. That passion plus her love for Elixir has also led her to become a maintainer of Elixir Code, which is a free open source Elixir curriculum. So if you want to start on Elixir, that's probably the best place to start. Fun fact about her, she is a cat person, but will admit to owning a dog. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Sophie. Ah, you won't clap? I will clap for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chantal, for that introduction. I am so excited to be here. Sorry for the technical difficulties that got us started a little bit late. I'm really looking forward to digging into this topic on Elixir adoption and education. Although I don't know if any of you were able to be at the recent CodeBeam conference, and we had a really great talk on Elixir adoption in Africa from Okath and Getty. So if you weren't there to check it out, I definitely recommend watching it once it gets published. I'm not sure, how much I'll have to add beyond their excellent coverage of these topics, but I did put together a couple of slides. I'm going to walk you guys through a story that I have about Elixir adoption. And then what I really want to do is just open it up for questions and have a conversation with you. And I know that some folks submitted questions ahead of time. So if you don't feel comfortable coming off mute and turning on your camera and asking a question, I can go and grab questions from there. But if you do feel comfortable coming off mute and being part of the conversation, I just kind of want to go in that direction and keep it kind of casual. But without much more delay, I'm going to jump into the few slides that I prepared. So Elixir adoption and education, and thank you guys so much for having me. I already got an excellent introduction from Chantal, but to sum it up a little bit more, I'm a senior engineer at GitHub. I'm the co-author of the Programming Phoenix Live View book, which is out in Pragmatic Bookshelf and beta right now. And I'm also a graduate of a programming bootcamp. I went to the Flatiron School, which is like a 3-month program for learning how to code. As was previously mentioned, I own a dog. This is him. He's very weird. He loves to rest in the sunshine. So, okay. All right, so I want to tell you guys a story. I want to tell you an Elixir adoption success story. The story of Elixir adoption will be told in 5 parts. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about the project. I'm going to talk about why we used Elixir. I want to introduce some facts about the team. I'll tell you about our journey to completing this project, and then I want to share some thoughts on why I think it was so successful, because successful it was. So the project itself. This was actually back when I was working at the Flatiron School on their engineering team, and we signed a contract to do a 3-month engagement with another ed tech company to deliver the Flatiron School's in-browser IDE to this company. And IDE is an interactive development environment. If you've used like Replit or any of these other things where you can type and execute code in the browser, you basically get the idea. So it wasn't just the IDE though. This was kind of the full set of features that we were delivering for this company that we were partnering with. We had a feature in which students would be able to click a button in this web app, and it should fork and clone their own copy of a GitHub repository containing an interactive lesson. And then for that interactive lesson, they should be able to write and run code directly in the browser, just like with an in-browser REPL. More than that, though, we also had some features for teachers. Teachers should be able to manage curriculum by creating, editing, and deleting lessons. And they should be able to manage curriculum for different cohorts and classes of students by copying this master curriculum plan, editing it for their classes, and making it available to just the right group of students at the right time. So that's a lot of features, and understanding what these features do and how we're going to build them really doesn't matter for the purposes of this conversation. All I'm trying to say right now is that we had a lot of stuff to build. This is a lot of work and only 3 months to do it in. So take a pause and talk a little bit about why we chose to work with Elixir. Two main reasons, really. So we needed a high degree of concurrency to handle the curriculum management tasks that I mentioned. When we have lots of teachers and lots of students and lots of lessons, we need a really efficient and highly concurrent way of managing all of this stuff in the background. So Elixir felt like a really good fit for that technical reason. But beyond that, though, and this is really what sealed the deal, we had some Elixir enthusiasts on the team that really advocated for it, people that either had some experience and were very committed to teaching other people, or people that were just really, really excited to learn about it. So I want to tell you a little bit about the team that went into this project. We had just one person with more than a year of Elixir experience. We had three people with like 6 months or less of Elixir experience. And then we had three people who had never read or written a line of Elixir in their lives. So pretty mixed team, and it's really skewing more towards folks that don't have any Elixir experience. So we've got a huge project with lots of features. We have just 3 months to build it in, and we have mostly people that don't know Elixir. What's going to happen next? All right, so a little bit about this journey. We did a technical design phase, which I'm sure you guys are probably familiar with. Before you start writing code, you plan the code you're going to write. Then we did some work to establish our technical as well as our process norms and practices. So everything from like, how do we want to plan sprints, and do we want to do pair programming, to what kind of tools are we going to use for testing, releases, deployment. And once we had that strong foundation in place, we were able to transition to shipping a lot of Elixir code very quickly. So I'll get into each of these phases of our journey now. In the technical design phase, we did sort of a technical design sprint in which we established the product requirements and the technical requirements. And we did some high level tech design for the new application. So we weren't getting into the nitty gritty technical details just yet, but we were starting to map out what we would need to build and how it was going to work. Once we had that in place, we did some work to establish our people norms and practices. We decided on things like daily stand-ups, weekly sprint planning, weekly retros. We also decided to do a lot of pair programming, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a bit. And so I want to highlight why it was critical for us to establish these practices. I'm not sure if I made this clear yet, but the Flatiron School engineering team was hired to partner with this other company to deliver this product. And that basically meant that we were sort of like squishing a new engineering team together with a couple of people from the Flatiron company's engineering team and a couple of people from this other company's engineering team. So not only did we have a lot of technical work to do and only 3 months to do it in, we were also meeting each other and working together and establishing how we would operate as a team for the very first time. So that kind of adds like another layer of complexity to this problem. Also, as we got started, we did some work to establish our technical norms and practices. So what sort of test coverage requirements and tools would we be using? What about code quality requirements and tooling? Best practices for observability, how do we want to handle logs and errors? What third-party tools are we going to integrate with, like Datadog or Sentry for error reporting? And then we also developed some practices around building releases with the mixed release tooling and just kind of getting into the habit of deploying our product early and often. So with all of that in place, as I said earlier, we were able to ship a lot of Elixir code very quickly. And we delivered the full project in way less than 3 months. We were able to go above and beyond the minimum requirements that we had set up for ourselves in that 3-month period and deliver a very comprehensive and a very robust product for this company that we had partnered with. And we learned a lot along the way. So I want to talk about how this is possible. We had such a big task ahead of us. We had to build a lot of features. We were bringing together this new group of people for the very first time. Most of them did not know Elixir. How did we over deliver by so much? How were we able to do this so quickly and so efficiently? So a couple of reasons. The first thing I want to talk about is what it is like to work with and learn Elixir for the very first time. And I would say that Elixir actually has a pretty gentle learning curve. So it's got an easy to read syntax. The documentation is really strong. There are a lot of great resources in the community, a lot of blog posts, videos, stuff like that. And also Elixir's language features make it easy to work with and sort of fun to learn. So things like pattern matching and working with pipes make it easy to write clean code, make it easy to write code that's highly testable. And these are all the kind of things that let people be productive very quickly, even if you're very new to the language. Elixir also has, in my opinion, very robust tooling, and it's getting more and more robust every day. Testing with XUnit is straightforward and intuitive. Releasing is made easy with the mixed release tools that are well documented and not overly complex. And then you have pretty much at this point, I would say, a library for everything you needed. So I'll use the example of working with JOTS, JSON Web Tokens, which is like a token you can use for authenticating web requests. It's a pretty common authentication scheme to go with if you're doing like API communication. And, we started our day saying, okay, we need to use JOTS and we don't know how to do it in Elixir. And we ended the day with a full solution for it in Elixir because there was already a library out there that gave us exactly what we needed to work with JOTS in Elixir. And that's an experience I've had again and again. I need to do X thing in Elixir. I hope there's a library that helps me, and there is a library that helped me. So there's a lot of community support and libraries out there to do most of the common tasks you need to build your web application. I also want to talk about why Elixir was the right tool for this particular job. So one of our requirements, as I mentioned earlier, was supporting concurrent curriculum management workflows. And Elixir is perfect for problems that need a lot of concurrency thrown at them. Elixir's Gen servers made it easy to build these concurrent workflows, and supervisors made it easy to manage the workflows and make them fault tolerant. So because Elixir was the right fit for handling these concurrency requirements, it helped us move very quickly. And now I'm going to move on to talk less about the features of the Elixir language that helped us be productive here, and a little bit more about how we worked teaching and learning into our own practices so that we could start moving quickly, even with people that were brand new to Elixir. We did a lot of pair programming. We pair programmed on pretty much every task and feature, and we would always make sure to partner one engineer who had Elixir experience with one engineer who didn't. And this ended up being really productive. I think people were a little hesitant at first because I know that pair programming can definitely be very challenging, and there is a little bit of a stigma that people were able to slow them down. But in this case, it allowed us to move really quickly, throwing two brains at problems instead of one, and doing a lot of knowledge sharing about Elixir expertise and Elixir context. We also did a lot of lunch and learns. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this or if anybody works at a company that institutes something like this, but basically it's kind of like a day that everybody eats lunch together while someone gives a short presentation. So we would schedule these regular lunch sessions and we would set up different team members to give short, kind of fun, I hope they were fun, presentations on topics like testing, concurrency, pattern matching, and more. So this was, I would say they're fun because it wasn't like, here we are doing more work on the project itself, fixing an issue or debugging something critical. It was more like taking a break, taking a step back, and sharing something that we had learned that was related to an Elixir topic. And we also worked really hard to celebrate our accomplishments, celebrate our wins. We used our daily stand-ups to shout out and celebrate progress on Elixir tasks and learning goals. And we made sure to give our engineers lots of opportunities to demo the cool things that they were building and learning. And I think this kind of just created this atmosphere of, dare I say, fun when we got to get really, really excited every time somebody had finished an interesting task, learned something new, or had a feature to demonstrate for us. And we also gave people opportunities to do lots of technical writing. We gave engineers the opportunity to write about their code, not only by requiring thorough documentation when it was appropriate to document code, but also by setting up engineers to write blog posts. We had an engineering team blog at the time, and we made sure that folks could take time out of their day to contribute blog posts about what they were learning and building in Elixir. And we also gave people opportunities like these lunch and learns and a few other opportunities to give short internal presentations on what we were building and learning. And I also think this kind of relates to the topic of celebrating wins because you're kind of doing a victory lap, right? You're getting to brag about something you built, something you learned, and you start kind of putting out your own excitement, and it gets a lot of other people excited about learning new Elixir things too. And this sort of gets me to the last point, which is our team culture. Whether it was the pair programming, celebrating our wins, giving individual engineers the opportunity to publish their writing or give presentations, it helped us bond really quickly as a team. Because remember, we were working together with people that we'd never met before for just this 3-month engagement. So we did have to kind of build up this brand new team culture, but we found a way to create a culture that was really supportive, really focused on celebrating our accomplishments. And it created a space that I think all felt very supported to learn together. And that is really one of the reasons, in my opinion, that we were able to learn so much and move so quickly. So I'm actually going to pause here I did review a lot of the questions that you guys submitted, and I'm happy to kind of go into some other slides that I prepared to dig into some of those questions and answers. But I'm just going to open it up and see if anybody wants to come off mute and ask questions about either the story that I just told or any of the other things that are on your mind on the topic of Elixir adoption and education. I see Peter's raising his hand. Come on off mute, Peter.
Thank you. Thank you for that's a really good story. I don't know if you can hear me clearly.
Yep.
Yes. So my question is, was there one thing you found at least more difficult than the other things during the process?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I definitely have an answer to that. And it's something that I think is a really common thing to struggle with depending on your programming background. So everyone that was working on this team, myself included, even those of us that had Elixir experience, our first language that we learned and the main thing that we had worked in leading up to this project was Ruby. So Rails projects, Ruby projects, which are object oriented. So I think the biggest challenge was changing the way that we thought about code from writing object oriented code to writing functional code. And I think one of the biggest problems that I personally ran into, I had like a pretty tough couple of days, let me tell you, trying to write this really complex bit of Elixir code that would do our concurrent curriculum management jobs. But I was bringing this OO mentality into it. So I wrote a lot of Elixir code that was sort of trying to be Ruby code. And honestly, it was just a mess. It was really hard to read. It didn't run correctly. It was really hard to test. And so that was one of my very first experiences struggling to sort of break out of these OO design patterns and to write clean functional code. And eventually we got there and we cleaned up the code and we made it more Elixir than Ruby. But I think dealing with the OO mindset, if that's a background that you have, and then coming into functional programming is definitely a big challenge.
Thank you. That's completely familiar.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Any other questions? If you raise your hand, I might not see you, so just feel free to come off mute. If there's collision, we'll figure it out. Okay, so I did prepare a couple other slides to go through the questions that you guys submitted. So I'll start with that and then we can. Oh, yep, somebody's got a question. Sort of, it's a little choppy. I don't know if that's Sigu, I see you're off mute, or Brian. All right, I'm gonna jump into these slides and then whoever had their question, feel free to interject in a moment once we open it up again. So one of the questions, I tried to aggregate the questions you guys asked into some of these common topics. So there were a lot of questions that came through about why you should learn Elixir, what's so great about Elixir, why would someone get started in this new language? And I think that you can kind of answer this question in two parts. And I think the first part is writing Elixir is awesome, right? It makes it really easy and very fun to write clean code thanks to language features like pattern matching, the pipe operator, message passing between these independent actors. I think that even if you are not in a stage, you know, in let's say the company that you work or the career that you're in where you're necessarily reaching for Elixir to solve these big problems of like scale and fault tolerance and concurrency, just writing pure Elixir is a fun experience. You can write really clean code that handles control flow with pattern matching instead of like lots of nested if statements. You can use the pipe operator to chain together these really eloquent pipelines of functions that tell a really clear story. And message passing really frees us up to write really flexible, powerful features when we can just kind of emit a message that some other part of our application can consume and act on. Really unlocks a lot of functionality. So Elixir is really awesome to work with for those reasons. But I think beyond that, it's also the perfect fit for solving some of the hardest problems in programming, thanks to its support for concurrency and its fault tolerance. So if you're dealing with something like needing to process a really high volume of messages or needing to have an application that is really resilient to errors, or needing to have something that is very, very concurrent, right? Can do a lot of things at once, then Elixir is absolutely the right fit for you. And its gentle learning curve and all of the nice language features that make it easy to read and write and fun to learn, those are all great reasons to reach for Elixir to solve these hard problems, even if it's a new language for you or your team. So I'll pause here and have, I guess, questions about why learn Elixir, as well as if anybody has their own experiences to share, any reasons that brought them to Elixir or any reasons why you're interested in learning about Elixir.
Let me try speaking again. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go for it.
Awesome. So you're talking about if you think you're going to have a scaling application, then you might need to use Elixir. Honestly, from my experience previously, sometimes we think we're going to need a very scaling application, but maybe we're just looking for a reason to use Elixir. And it's something that could be done in other languages, but your excitement gets you into actually saying that it's only Elixir that will do that. Have you ever gotten yourself in such a situation, or any team?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, right? People, and I think that I do see this a lot, right? People getting excited about the scaling possibilities of Elixir, the concurrency and the fault tolerance possibilities of Elixir, and then you'll end up finding that you maybe don't need to work with those features directly, right? Maybe we thought we were going to have this massive scale and we were going to use all the gen servers and all the async Elixir tasks to do it, and we ended up not needing to reach for them. And I'll say two things about that. The first thing I'll say is, great, you got to build an Elixir app. Congratulations on using any excuse to bring Elixir into your ecosystem, because it's fun to work with. And there are so many other features of Elixir as a language that make it, I think, a great fit for businesses, including its first-class support for observability with open telemetry, first-class support for releases with mixed releases. Like, there's so many reasons why Elixir is such a great choice to make for individuals, teams, and businesses, even if you don't end up using those concurrency and fault tolerance features right away. But the other thing I'll say is, if you are building a Phoenix app, you are benefiting from Elixir's concurrency and fault tolerance and all of the awesome power of OTP, because it's all happening for you under the hood of Phoenix. Poolboy is managing these web requests and connections for you very efficiently in a manner that is very fault tolerant and in a manner that is highly concurrent. Ditto for using the Ecto library to interact with your database. You're getting concurrency, you're getting all of the features of OTP for free under the hood of the frameworks and libraries that you're using in your Elixir apps every day. So even if you don't find yourself building your own features and workflows that are like highly concurrent and fault tolerant, you're getting the benefits of those language features in your average Elixir application.
Yeah, so that means that over-engineering is sometimes Elixir causes over-engineering, where you
I have seen that. Yeah.
Simply because you want to use Elixir.
Yeah, I definitely have seen that, right? Like, you're excited about fault tolerance, you're excited about concurrency, so you bring in these features even though you're maybe making things more complex than they have to be. And I mean, I don't really have any advice other than saying you don't need to do that, right? Because like I said, you're getting concurrency and fault tolerance for free if you're using Ecto, if you're building a Phoenix app, if you're using Broadway or any of the Elixir libraries that manage, RabbitMQ connections. So it's just, I think, helpful to keep in mind that if you're excited about Elixir's concurrency and fault tolerance, you're going to get it for free like 95% of the time, and you don't need to build specific features to manage that yourself. So it's okay to sort of hold off on saying, I'm going to do my own concurrency management, my own fault tolerance management, until you see, let's say, that the behavior or performance of your application really requires it. I see we've got another question from Peter, if you want to jump in.
So not really a question, but a response to your question, or yes, to the previous slides or this current slide. So I think I found testing in Elixir to be really what is the word for it? It's really easy to get started, to get a lot of coverage, test coverage of your code. The packages that Elixir provides for testing are just really easy to use compared to maybe some other languages. Okay, this is a bit opinionated, but Python and Go, that is from my experience. So yeah, that's why I kind of like Elixir right now, above the other features, of course, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you for calling out that about testing. And by the way, I could definitely sit here and talk all day about what I think is better about Elixir that Go is lacking. And testing is definitely one of them. Testing in Elixir is, I would say there's like a very low barrier to entry, right? You don't have to be an Elixir expert to start getting some really high quality tests that give a lot of coverage. And Elixir testing libraries out of the box let you test like just about everything that your code could possibly do, including message passing, working with PubSub. And that's one of the nice features about Live View as well. You can pretty much exercise the full functionality of your Live View with like pure Elixir tests. You don't need to bring in any external JavaScript testing libraries. And that's a theme I think I see a lot, right? Yeah, everything you need is there for you in Elixir, which is great. Any other questions or anything else to add here? Otherwise, we can move on to the next topic. I'll just pause for a moment in case anybody wants to jump in.
Yeah, can I just say Elixir is fun to write? Is that a good reason enough for someone to start writing?
Absolutely. Oh my God, I'm pretty sure that's what I have written right here, right? It's fun to write. And I think that's a great reason to learn it, right? And I think this truly is one of the reasons why, going back to the story that I told you guys, we had 3 months to build this thing. It was really complicated. We had a group of people that had never worked together before, didn't know each other, had to build up all these new team practices. And I truly believe that like the main reason why we were able to be successful here is because we had so much fun learning and writing Elixir. And that is really something to think about if you're considering bringing Elixir into your company or into your team. All right, so I'll move on for a bit. There'll be more time for questions. Oh, somebody's got something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the third point, to talk about message passing. Okay, so Joe Armstrong talked. Okay, when you're writing Elixir, deep underneath there's Erlang, right? So Joe Armstrong was talking about Erlang being the true OOP, that is. So in the normal OOP, for instance, I'll talk about Ruby or maybe Java, for instance. You'll realize that you don't experience that message passing as such. Like with Elixir, I believe that if you want to experience, as much as it's functional, but you want to experience what was originally intended for OOP, so I think Elixir is also a place to be.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, right? The actor model, as opposed to the object-oriented model, the actor model in which you have entities that send messages to each other and can respond to those messages. That to me really feels like it models the real world in a way that OO actually kind of doesn't. So I definitely encourage folks to check out, just do a Google search like Erlang actor model or Joe Armstrong actor model and dig in a little bit to that line of thinking. And there's some fun stuff in there. All right, so another question that came up a lot in the form that folks submitted is why companies are adopting Elixir. Why are companies already choosing Elixir? Why should they choose Elixir? And I think there are so many reasons. So as the story I told demonstrates, Elixir empowers teams to be highly productive very quickly because it has a gentle learning curve, because it has really comprehensive tooling, and because engineers enjoy writing it. People ramp up on it fairly quickly. And so I think that adoption cost, that fear of like, oh, no one on my team knows Elixir, I think it's kind of mitigated a little bit by that. At the same time, Elixir's tooling has become increasingly mature. You have telemetry baked right into frameworks like Phoenix and other Elixir libraries so that you really treat observability as a first-class citizen in your applications. You have the release tooling with mixed release that makes releases easy to work with. You've got X unit tests that make it pretty easy to cover all of your test scenarios without bringing in, other testing utilities or third-party libraries. And so all of this kind of adds up to developers like it and are advocating for it. And it's not a bad thing to make your developers happy if you want them to be productive. Let's see. So I'll pause here and we'll sort of take questions, comments, ideas on why companies are adopting Elixir. I feel like I left something out here, which is it's a great fit for when you need massive scale, when you need things that are highly concurrent, when you need things that are fault tolerant. So you see it a lot in companies that do like a lot of data processing. I feel like the company Simple Bet is a good example of that. I think it's like a sports betting site and they need to process a lot of sports bets, I guess. You see Erlang show up for things like WhatsApp, which has to do with an extremely high amount of concurrency. And Elixir being built on top of OTP in the same way just makes it a great fit for use cases like that. So questions on adoption. Why should a company choose Elixir? Or I'm just curious, of the people here, if anyone is working with Elixir professionally now, why did your company choose Elixir?
Excitement-driven choices.
I love that. Yeah. And that's kind of my experience too. Like the number one reason, if I'm being honest, why some of the companies that I've worked with have chosen Elixir. And it's because there's like one or two people that are just so excited about it that they just kind of convince everybody. Yeah. Peter, you want to jump in?
Yeah, so this is just maybe echoing something you've written here, the Elixir releases. So you find that when you're releasing an application, having this package or a package application release that can be run on any environment makes things quite easy for deployment. That's one major reason I think that's one of the good reasons maybe companies are taking this up, because you can have this deployed quite easily because it's deployable anywhere, right? As long as it's on a supported OS. But
yeah, absolutely, right? It's really easy to build and release your application and run it anywhere. And there's also so many other great sort of production release tooling features like hot upgrades, right? You can apply changes to your code as it runs in production. The remote console, you can load up a console that is connected to the production runtime, gives you a ton of visibility and control when it comes to debugging production issues. I think that this kind of brings me to another point, which is that Elixir is really easy to instrument. It's really easy to observe, in part because of the way that telemetry and open telemetry have come into the Elixir ecosystem. And any one of us that have sort of dealt with debugging very mysterious production issues and we don't know maybe where the problem is coming from or why, I think can really relate to how important it is to have that observability treated so highly in an ecosystem. If your team is empowered to see bugs and fix them quickly, you've got developers that are happy and you've got customers that are happy because things don't break as much. And when they do break, we get to fix it really fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Other questions on this topic, or if anybody else wants to share why they or their teams or their companies have chosen to work with Elixir?
Okay. So
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Now you go first, Tracy.
Okay. So recently we were having a conversation with a friend and they were like, they wanted to adapt Elixir, but they had this fear that there are few Elixir developers who can maintain the application. So what advice can you give to those who'd like to adapt Elixir, but they have this fear?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the really hard ones to get over, right? People are afraid to adopt Elixir because they don't already have people that work with Elixir and they're worried about being able to hire people that work with Elixir. And it's one of these chicken and egg situations, right? You have people that are afraid to spend time learning Elixir because they don't think it'll get them a job. And then you have companies that don't want to use Elixir because they can't hire enough people that work in Elixir. So it's like, how do we solve this problem? I would say a couple of things for that. And I think, again, the story I told earlier is a really great example of I think how easy it is to ramp up a team on Elixir as a language and, you know, Phoenix as a framework. The resources are there, the documentation is there, and it's fun to learn and it's fun to work with. And I think once you kind of get that excitement sparked in your team, they're going to learn things really quickly and they're going to be productive really quickly, not only because Elixir is fun to learn and fun to write because of pattern matching and pipes and all of these other language features, but because of all of the robust tooling in the ecosystem. It's really easy to instrument and observe your Elixir code. So it's really easy to debug it in production. It's very, I'm not gonna say it's very easy. I don't wanna throw around this word so much, but there's strong support for Elixir releases, which you can get out into the world and deploy and run on any supported OS, like Peter was saying. So what I would say to companies that are hesitant to bring on Elixir because they don't have enough people to work with it, I would say that people can learn. And if they're excited about learning and if they want to learn, then they're going to learn quickly because the tooling is there, the documentation is there, and the resources are there in the community.
Yeah, I was just about to share about how we got into Elixir.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So yeah, it was more of an opportunistic move because we were trying to learn Elixir at the same time. Then we got a client project, and luckily enough, the client was flexible as to which stack we can use. So it was a micropayment application. So the decision was, since whenever every payment comes in, you need to process it. After you process it, you send out SMSs. So we were thinking about how really can we utilize Elixir into getting the payments, processing them, and sending out the SMS. If we have about, let's say, 100 people paying at the same time. So we thought that Elixir could be a good tool for this, and we went for it because number one, the team supported. Number two, the client was okay with it. And to date, it's been about 3 years. The system just runs. It just handles everything. It just works. We never really have to go there. The first deployment was done onto Heroku. Not a good idea, but it still works.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And that's something that I actually hear a lot, right? We built this app, we deployed it, and that was 3 years ago, and it just runs. And that's incredible. And that's where Elixir's fault tolerance really shines. And I think that's actually another answer to the previous question, right? On what would you say to companies that are hesitant to adopt Elixir if they feel they don't have the existing in-house expertise? Elixir's fault tolerance means that a lot of the times it's just going to run. So your support burden is going to be relatively low. And you don't kind of have to worry about how am I going to take people that already aren't Elixir experts and point them at complicated bugs or production issues that are recurring. Elixir is so robust and it sort of falls into this fault tolerant philosophy of like, let it crash and then bring it back online, that a lot of the common problems that you see with recurring bugs and people spending a lot of time debugging production issues really don't happen as often in Elixir applications. Other questions on Elixir adoption or anyone else wanting to share why they're working with Elixir? And even if you're not working with it professionally, if it's just something that you have started to learn or you're interested in learning, what brings you to Elixir in any capacity?
Can I share one more?
Yeah,
Not a
please
story,
do.
but
Yeah.
Yeah, an advice to any company out there trying to adopt Elixir, but they're not sure about it. Always start small. Take a subsection of your whole application, then let it run on Elixir. See if there will be improvement or if it will be better than what you had before. You don't need to upgrade your whole application.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. One of the things that I've experienced and I've seen other companies do is say, okay, we've got this big monolith, this big legacy system, legacy application, And we want to start peeling off some responsibilities from this legacy monolith into maybe their own single purpose applications. And that's a great opportunity to start bringing in Elixir as a new language. You've got a really small subset of responsibilities you want it to handle. You can put a small number of people kind of dedicated to spinning up that application and owning that new domain. And Elixir is also a really great fit for working with RabbitMQ as a message bus. So you can use RabbitMQ or gRPC or REST APIs, whatever you want, to handle that communication between your legacy system and your brand new Elixir, let's say, microservice. So something that I've seen a lot and advocated for is peeling responsibilities out of your monolith, using it to start up a new Elixir microservice, and actually using RabbitMQ to message pass between the systems. Okay, so with that, since we're coming into our last couple minutes here, I will go to, I think, the last topic. Yes, excellent. So another question that came in a lot was how to learn and teach Elixir. And I think the most success that I've had on both ends of that has really just been building things in Elixir and working together with other engineers. And that, for me, I've been lucky enough that that's happened, in my workplace, not at GitHub now, unfortunately, but in my previous company at the Flatiron School. We had a couple of people that were just really excited about Elixir, really evangelizing it and advocating for it. So there were some opportunities to build new Elixir apps. And once you start writing Elixir, and once you're working with other people who are also learning Elixir and you're starting to teach one another and learn from each other, I think that learning just happens really, really fast. So the pair programming that we did on our project was a huge reason why we were so fast and so successful. The people that were brand new to Elixir picked things up very, very quickly because they were working so close with people that had a little bit more experience, but who were also learning and who were just so excited about everything that they were learning. So just getting your hands dirty writing code and finding other people to work with, I think, is a really big piece of the learning puzzle. Another thing I've had positive experience with is book clubs. So at companies that I've been in before, we'll start like a Elixir book club. We'll pick an Elixir book to read and we'll meet at lunch like once a week or once every 2 weeks and review what we've learned. Maybe one person will give like a little presentation each time. There's so many great Elixir books out there, some of which I've actually, I think, linked to on the next slide, but I'll just promote any Elixir book from the pragmatic bookshelf line. I will say it's good, and I'm only slightly biased in that opinion. Going to meetups, hello, welcome, you guys are already here. Just meeting other people that are learning Elixir, that are excited about Elixir, that can talk to you about Elixir is a great way to get started. Going to conferences, I think I've seen some of you at the various code beams and Elixir comps that has just happened, and I know that a few of you guys were involved in planning and holding the very first ever Elixir Conf Africa, which is so exciting. Those are all great ways to sort of grow your own personal network of people that are writing Elixir, people that you can learn from and talk to. And then mentoring groups. I think some of you may have participated in a mentoring group that Bruce Tate runs that I'm a little bit involved in, but it doesn't have to be like a big official, oh, I've signed up for this existing mentoring group. Like, get together 2 friends who are interested in Elixir, and once a week you just spend an hour hacking together. So that really just brings me back to, in my experience, spending time writing Elixir with other people who are also learning is a really powerful way to get started and to build up that expertise. So I do have some resources for people to check out. I always recommend Elixir School, it's all free. The Adopting Elixir book, that Ben Marks, I think Jose and Bruce Tate are the co-authors, through Pragbog, is a great one just on the topic of adoption more generally. And then the Elixir Lang official docs on learning Elixir are so many more resources than I could gather for you. So I definitely recommend checking those out. But we do have a few minutes left, so I'll open it up for questions on teaching and learning Elixir, as well as maybe just if anybody wants to share their own experiences teaching or learning Elixir.
I think I would say, personally, one thing I've loved with Elixir, especially in the community, is how inclusive it is. I mean, you can go to any conference and you meet Fred Hubbard, you meet Robert Twadi. I mean, you meet all these big people everywhere you go. So, I mean, it's kind of small, but also inclusive in a very good way.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for shouting that out. And I think one thing that's kind of nice is that a lot of the people that first started building out the Elixir language when it was brand new, including Jose, were people that came from the Ruby community. And the Ruby community is sort of founded, I don't know if you guys have heard this saying, so you know, Mats is the creator of Ruby, and he's always somebody that has tried to put just kind of like acceptance and friendliness and inclusivity at the forefront of the Ruby language and the community. So there's this Ruby saying that goes, Mats is nice and so are we. So this idea that if you're a member of the Ruby community, you are intentionally focused on being welcoming and inclusive and supportive of beginners and people of all backgrounds. And a lot of the people that first came over to create Elixir came from the Ruby community and sort of brought that philosophy with them. So it's not perfect, of course. I'm not going to speak for every member of the Elixir community, but I think the Elixir community really intentionally strives to be a place that is welcoming and especially supportive of beginners. It looks like Peter's got his hand up if you want to jump in.
So just a shout out to Elixir School.
Yeah.
I think I've been there quite a few times learning the basics from that site. I think it's got almost everything you would need to learn if you need to refer to something that's not on the official documentations. There's a lot of content there. And it's free.
Yeah. It's free. Yes. Thank you for that shout out. It's free. It's translated into lots of languages. And we're also always looking for contributors, by the way. If there's like, you're reading a lesson and you see something that's out of date, or you would want to add something or change it or edit it, you can just head on over to the GitHub repo and open a pull request. If you have an idea for any new lessons or content that you want to see, once again, head on over to the GitHub repo, open an issue, we can get the conversation going. Or if you have a blog post in mind, because Elixir School also has a blogging page, and we want to publish more people. It doesn't have to be, you know, a super long blog post with all the technical details. It could be something short and sweet. So if anybody's interested in getting involved, head over to Elixir School, check out the GitHub repo, or find me on Twitter, which I did not put my Twitter handle on here, but I think it's been in all the promotional materials, so we can always talk more there. Sigu, I see you've got your hand up.
Oh yeah, another shout out to Elixir School again. So we've been doing Elixir for about 3 years now. Is it 3? Yeah. And for every time before anyone joins or before we get interns into joining the team, the first requirement is the Elixir School. Just go to the Elixir School, learn Elixir School, then your the questions that we're going to ask you are going to be actually based off Elixir School. So that's how it's been running for the last couple of years. Elixir School is always the first one. So yeah, thanks so much for the Elixir School.
Yeah, and thank you to everybody that has been enjoying it, getting stuff out of it, contributing to it. This is one of the things that really started to bring me in touch with kind of the wider Elixir community around the world, because there are so many contributors who translate the content into like all these different languages. And it was sort of my first taste of how broad and diverse the Elixir community is. And it's been really wonderful to be involved. So definitely check it out if you haven't yet. I think we're just about out of time, actually. So I might hand it back to Chantal to wrap up. It has been so great hanging out with you guys today, this afternoon, this morning, tonight, whatever time it is for you. This has been a blast. I really appreciate you having me over to participate. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, Sophie. That was great.
Yes, thank you, Sophie. On behalf of the Elixir Kenya fraternity, I'm sorry, there's a lot of construction going on behind me, so I'll try to make this quick. On behalf of the Elixir Kenya fraternity and on my own behalf, I extend a very hearty vote of thanks to you, Sophie, for gracing your important work and sharing with us your findings and opinions today. I've been your host. My name is Chantal Chederata. You can now live at your own peril. The conversation can keep going. Yes.
Thank you, Sophie.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thanks, Chantal. And I'll catch you guys later.